Back in the early 90s, I got caught up in a phenomenon that began sweeping through my school in the form of WWF, the World Wrestling Federation, now known as WWE after those wildlife people threw Vince McMahon's company over the top rope for a devastating count-out. This manifested itself initially in the form of collectible cards, which were all the rage and became the focus of much swapping tomfoolery in the pursuit of being the first person to collect them all. The bizarre array of colourful characters and rumours about their antics began to do the rounds, and everyone was soon entranced by this intriguing universe and wanted to know more. WWF Magazine was a fount of knowledge, and at the time when the show was exclusive to Sky TV, which was an out-of-reach novelty to most people, proved to be the closest many of us would get to actually seeing this combat in action. I always remember the article that had an abundance of photos documenting a trap set by Jake the Snake Roberts, whereby he had lured the Ultimate Warrior into a room infested with snakes, and after being bitten had just left his unconscious body to tumble to the floor for a grisly fate. Of course, as a kid of about 10, my questioning of the authenticity of all of this was severely wanting, and the legal ramifications of a wrestler attempting to essentially murder his colleague was far from my mind next to the fact that this was all incredibly fascinating and without question one crazy ride. As we got hold of VHS videos that had started to filter into the UK, the lid began to be prized off of these wrestling shenanigans, and a bigger picture of the overall landscape became clearer as we were able to see for ourselves the past showdowns of the 80s. With Hulk Hogan and his Hulkamania fanbase, the towering and immovable object that was Andre the Giant, and a host of other fascinating characters, including a young face-painted whippersnapper who was tearing up the scene, the aforementioned Ultimate Warrior, it was all so exciting. And save for the fact that witnessing it in motion, I could see that these guys were clearly not actually hurting each other. It meant little next to the sheer spectacle of it all. After the legendary slam Hulk Hogan had performed on Andre the Giant at WrestleMania 6, he was the obvious hero of the era. But at the point we'd been drawn into it all, it was when he was pitted against the Ultimate Warrior in a showdown for the title that things really got exciting. It's hard to overstate how big this event was. This was the big one that seemed to turn the air electric. It was like the Man United vs Arsenal of the early 2000s, except even bigger. Or in gaming terms, the Sonic vs Mario of every playground debate of the early 90s. And in a twisting and turning example of wrestling theatrics, the Ultimate Warrior took the title, sealing himself as my favourite wrestler of all time. And in a gaming related twist, the corner shop outside my school, which housed an arcade section out the back, sporting around 8 coin-op cabs, suddenly had a surprise arrival in the form of WWF Wrestlefest, a follow-up to the 1989 game WWF Superstars. This game just looked incredible, with bold, colourful graphics, a soundtrack that's still in my head to this day, and all the familiar characters of the wrestling universe that we knew and loved from the videos and magazines. This just seemed amazing, and in a little arcade where Street Fighter 2 hadn't quite arrived yet, everyone gathered round queuing in huge crowds for the next turn. I even used to skip lunch despite verging on passing out from hunger just to pump my lunch money into this thing, and it was well worth it. The events were a sight to behold, with a huge amount of characters participating in a Royal Rumble that brimmed with excitement, characters announcing their imminent arrival before heading to the ring, while those already involved in the brawl tried to throw other participants over the top rope. It was the type of chaotic madness that was befitting of the larger-than-life characters that it featured, and was a point of entertaining friction between the kids at my school when they were near punch-ups when they had been thrown out by the opposing player. As mash-tastic as its playstyle was, with you having to hammer the buttons rapidly to win grapples and balance an advantage with players of lesser health, which seemed to have an impact on your character's endurance in such situations, the gameplay was top draw. It was both an incredible game and an incredible moment that has stood the test of time in my memories as being one of the peak arcade experiences of the early 90s. But as always, my handful of 20p's didn't last forever, so it wasn't long before I was looking to ply my hand at some wrestling frolics in my own home. Skirting over the torment of WWF on the Commodore 64, which I played via cassette, and is one of the main memories I have of hanging my head over the tape deck and wanting to cry as it failed to load, when the game did actually work, like Terry Hatcher's Season 3 hairstyle, it wasn't cutting it. It was similar to the arcade in concept, I suppose, except instead of hammering the buttons, you partook in grapples by shaking the stick from side to side. But there was no two ways about it. This was miles off of what I was after, and more hardship was to follow. While having acquired a Sega Megadrive in 1992 was a joy and an abundance, I did experience the ire of having to watch on as those spawny Super Nintendo gits received Super Wrestlemania in March of that year. However, it wasn't long before the Megadrive got its own version of the game, and if there was any doubt as to which version I was going to get, when I saw the Ultimate Warrior who'd been left out of the SNES iteration would be present and correct on the Sega, things felt like they were coming together. It did take a little while before I got hold of a copy. As much as I was interested in WWF, there was no way it was going to displace Sonic or Streets of Rage from the top of my shopping list. But eventually I did get it. While the Mega Drive may not have had the same grunt as the coin-ops of the day, acclaim-based Flying Edge's Super Wrestlemania did a good job in giving me a taste of the wrestling hijinks I've been so looking for. It has a base of 8 selectable characters, with Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior leading the charge on the character select screen. We also have the Mega Drive console exclusive British Bulldog, and rounding out the roster is Macho Man Randy Savage, Papa Shango, Shawn Michaels, Ted DiBiase and IRS. This differs from the Super Nintendo version, which features a larger amount of wrestlers, with Legion of Doom, The Undertaker and Typhoon included. All in all though, while The Undertaker was an obvious loss to Sega, there was no way that I was getting the SNES version without the Ultimate Warrior in there, and on top of that omission, there was a lot of other issues with Nintendo's version as well that we'll come to. Heading past this rather snazzy title screen with a very lobster-toned Hulk Hogan, we hit the options menu, and it's here where you can pick from 4 event types. From a simple one-on-one match through to tag team where you can pick 2 superstars and swap them out as and when needed, the core of the game has exactly what you would want at its foundations. For additional fun and frolics however, you might want to try out the Survivor series, whereby you pick 4 characters and then face off against the other remaining roster participants. You can swap them at leisure on the ringside, and is a fun brawl for the ultimate domination of the squared circle. But the biggest and most rewarding challenge is the main event mode, allowing you to play through the entire character roster as you rise through the ranks on your way to becoming the WWF champion and thus receiving the iconic championship belt. This comes complete with closing credits and oddly is a mode completely absent from the SNES version. In fact, on the Super Nintendo, you don't even have the option of picking your opponent in the one-on-one category, with the CPU making the decision for you. So much for being able to pick an iconic showdown of your own choosing. Bit of an annoyance. But even worse, the Super Nintendo iteration doesn't even have the wrestlers' unique finishers, with each character essentially a reskinning of one player type and having no distinctive characteristics of their own. Oof. Thankfully, the Mega Drive version has a selection of attacks individual to each wrestler, such as the Ultimate Warrior's running splash, Hulk Hogan's leg drop, and Macho Man's flying elbow drop. Depending on the move, these are executed in a unique fashion, so Macho Man's opponent needs to be down, for example. This greatly enhances the gameplay on Sega's machine, and gives a lot more flair to the matches, as finishing a friend off with one of these special moves is greatly satisfying. There's a decent amount of options to play through here in multiplayer, and with a friend in tow, the battle for supremacy of the ring will surely have you glued to the screen more than that random episode of Baywatch where Hulk Hogan and co turned up to cavort with the prime lights of Pamela Anderson and Yasmin Bleeth. Ah, Yasmin, how we adore thee.
Well, how could anyone not be in love with Yasmin Bleeth?
Graphically, the game is solid on the Mega Drive, with your wrestler instantly identifiable and having all the character of their real-life counterparts. The colours are solid and bold, and the sprites are decently sized and well rendered. There could have perhaps been a little more going on with the crowd, who are less animated than a cardboard cutout in peak COVID days and leaving the atmosphere flatter than your mama's chest. But gripes aside, at least they don't detract from the action. It's also kinda hard not to feel that more could have been made from the ring entrances, which are basically non-existent. Nope, you just start out standing there in the ring as the bell chimes, with none of the OTT theatrics of the real show, so there's no chance for the Ultimate Warrior to gas himself out with his antics pre-match, which to be fair, he probably would have preferred. Thankfully, this was an era well before they had an ensemble of ladies hitting the scene, which is probably for the best, because if I'd been deprived of one of those Stacy Keibler ring entrances on my Mega Drive, it would have surely resulted in some serious pad throwing action. But one thing they do get right here are the characters' individual ring entrance themes, with the epic lights of Hulk Hogan's heroic all-American music present and correct, while the hype of the Ultimate Warrior's driving tune is also given the 16-bit treatment. All in all, while they are perhaps not the greatest examples of the Mega Drive sound chip, I gotta give some kudos for their inclusion. And so, in summary, while Super Wrestlemania for the Mega Drive was perhaps not quite as grandiose as the arcade WWF Wrestlefest, which, funnily enough, I've recently seen re-released as a bar-top arcade unit, it was a decent crack at bringing the attention-grabbing entertainment of the World Wrestling Federation home in commendable style. It might have been a little more humble, with fewer characters on the screen and not quite as much pizzazz, but at the end of the day, it's a darn fine laugh. Plus, you know, in case I've not made it clear, the Mega Drive has the Ultimate Warrior. So as always, Sega wins again! Thanks for watching, gaming guys and girls, and keep it locked here on Gaming for Ages for more retro goodness soon. Laters!